Good morning, LinkedIn. Welcome to Let's Build HubSpot Adoption with Tony Dowling. Happy Monday. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well. Good afternoon to all my fans this side of the pond. Yes, no, good morning to you, Chris, in your part of the world. Good afternoon to everybody in our part of the world. I'm very excited. I have to tell you today, I'm very excited.
Why are you so excited today?
That's cool. That was a leading question, wasn't it? So the adoption gap framework, we've been talking about the adoption gap framework in a really granular detail, but we've worked on it over the last couple of weeks back at Real Inbound Towers, and just to continue to codify and continue to understand what it's all about, really, which obviously is intended on making it easier for people to understand what we're trying to achieve. And we come up with the latest iteration. So if you've read our framework, our email framework, the adoption gap framework, it'll take you through 5 stages of adoption, which is pretty good. But we've got it down to 3 now, I think, that you need to be considerate of. And my concern for businesses, particularly buying HubSpot for the first time, or maybe they've bought HubSpot and they're in that dreaded scenario where it's not working so well for them. Excuse me. The concern is that most businesses, most HubSpot partners are usually dealing with 1 or 2 perhaps of these ideas. They're not dealing with all of them together. And we're not talking about the whole picture. I think there's potentially an issue with the way we sell HubSpot, in that because it's so complicated, the idea of the customer platform even is relatively complicated. It's really hard to get the value across. And because it's so hard to get the value across, salespeople tend to focus on features and benefits. They always have. And as a purchaser, you're bombarded with email marketing will do this for you and increase it by 71% and 27 more of these and 35% of this, or you could do your social media marketing, and you get these statistics, you get these point solution conversations going on, which I think is really difficult, because the latest analogy we've come up with is like buying a car. So let's say your objective, right, is to drive to London, which is about 3 hours from where I am. It's probably a bit closer than where you are, right? And I talk to a salesperson and they say, you need to buy a car. I go, fantastic. That sounds great. Look at that. It's lovely. It's shiny. It's got all these features and benefits. Perfect. £20,000, £40,000 is probably more like it, isn't it? There you go. There's your car. So now I'm stood on the side of the road. I've been sold this car and I don't know how to use it. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have any car insurance. I don't have a map to get me to London. I've got the tool, but I have no way of successfully navigating the problem I have. So if you're buying HubSpot to grow your business, which is the main reason most people are buying HubSpot, right? To grow your business, you're getting the tool, they're parking it on the side of the road for you. They talk to you about the social media and the emails and the live chat and the sales funnels and the forecasting and the reporting and all these amazing things. And there you go. You've got HubSpot parked on your driveway, ready to go. How do you use it? How do you use it? Now, how are you going to get to where you want to go? So this is the adoption gap. This is another way of describing the adoption gap. The space between buying HubSpot and using it successfully. So I've got it parked on my drive. Now, most businesses will talk to us about the mechanicals of the car. They'll show us how to change the oil and put a battery in and put petrol in it, maybe. They'll show us the electrics. If something's not working, they'll be able to fix it for us. But they're not necessarily teaching us how to drive. They're not making us legal, roadworthy. They're not showing us the way to the destination, right? So we've got this analogy of HubSpot here where we're only getting like a small part. Now, the adoption gap framework is now in, say, 3 parts. So I'll just quickly, before I let you back in, I'll just quickly try to capture those, right? You've got the human part, you've got the strategy part, and you've got the technology part. The human part is I would probably describe it as the culture, the change culture, or the culture of change within an organization. It's essential that this exists before you see the business move towards successful utilization of HubSpot. The strategy is what we're going to do in the first place, right? So if the human part is getting your driver's license and doing your driver ed, is that what they call it in the US, doing your driver's lessons, so you can actually drive the car. The strategy is the route, the planning. We go here, then we go here, then we'll stop there for an hour, we'll have a cup of coffee, and then we'll go. And then the final bit is the technology bit. That's the bit that we all focus on. So here's the technology. Here's your process maps. This is how the AI is going to support us. That's the bit that I think is very difficult for people to get their heads around. And because we don't talk about the other two bits, then this gap is created. It's immediately created. The car shows up when you're driving, a mechanic gets out and proceeds to show you how the engine works and how the fuel flows through one end of the car to the other. That's what we've been working on. And I really like the analogy because it's just, again, it's quite an easy concept to get your head around. But breaking it down now into 3 steps, I'm really pleased with that. It's people, humans, the strategy, your plan, your management control system, all that kind of gubbins, how we're actually going to get where we want to go. And the tech, we do that quite well. Everybody's doing the tech. But those other 2 bits, I find, are the bits that are missing.
Yeah. Yeah, we always find our way back to the basics. People, strategy, technology, people, process, technology, data, like getting these foundational elements right. What came to mind, and let's see if the analogy works, is, oh, Tony, I've heard that there is a place called the Autobahn that I could drive as fast as I want, right? So I'm going to buy a car that can just go so fast, right? And I go buy it, and I'm in the UK, and it comes to the driveway, and okay, how am I going to get it to the Autobahn to be able to use it? Haven't figured that out yet. Maybe eventually. Instead, I'm going to try and find places around here where I can drive it fast. And that doesn't go well, does it?
It's not what you bought it for. Is that absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Right? Either we run into stuff because we don't have space like that to drive 150 miles an hour, or HubSpot just shuts down the email send because you just bought that list of 100,000 people, and 100 emails in, we understand that you don't have jurisdiction to even send to that list. So we're not even going to let you do the thing that you could use HubSpot for if you're ready. I love it, man. I think that's again, that's, and just a little bit of behind the scenes here. And Tony hasn't read this. I just love how when we're like, whatever tools we're using as educators in this case, it's like we know so clearly that HubSpot can help businesses achieve their goals. So our challenge is, how can we make this practicable? How can we overcome the challenges that are getting in the way? And I've been doing a lot of AI work in terms of, okay, we've got all these shows and all these content, like how do we know it's delivering what we want? And I put in all our transcripts, and it comes back with the show mission of, in an ecosystem where HubSpot is often sold as point solutions, but needs to function as a customer platform, this show bridges the critical gap between implementation and true organizational adoption through 2 very specific things, and that's strategic leadership, engagement. They have to be engaged and bought in. And then practical change management. Practical is the key word there, right? So breaking it down into these 3 phases, even like starting with 5 and then breaking it down to 3, it's like, how do we make this tangible and practical for people to actually do now? So I love you sharing that journey with us.
And I'm further impressed. I think those 2 buckets, that's arguably even more clear, even better. I'm ex-scientist. I did physics at university, and the scientific process is really important. It's ingrained in me. And you see a thing, right? You see a thing, and you see a thing happen, and probably you see it again, and then maybe again, and you think, this is a really interesting thing. I wonder if this thing always happens. Right, so this is the start of law, science law. So we have a theory, and we say, my theory is, if I do X, then Y will always happen. And typically what we do as scientists, we experiment. We look to repeat that process under lots of different conditions so that we can get to the point where we can declare our theory. So we understand it so rigorously, we can say, this is a thing, this is a universal constant. That's the language that we use. The more simple we can make the idea of adoption, I think, the better, because it's far easier to explain it to people. And if you understand it, you'll be able to repeat it to, like, torture the metaphor a little bit. And if you think what you just said there, leadership and practical change management, I love that. Leadership is about that human part as much as anything. It's about creating an environment in which people are psychologically safe. Right? This is a critical thing. When it comes to change management, one of the reasons we don't want to do things is because we feel uncertain about them. And we are programmed by our DNA, by our survival instincts to avoid uncertainty. Right? We don't like a scenario that is uncertain. It makes us physically uncomfortable. We want to get out of there and move to an area, a place where we can be certain of the outcomes. So that psychological safety has got to be there. That can only come from leadership. It's no good if your mate says to you, oh, you'll be fine. Don't worry. If you mess this up, it'll be fine. That doesn't mean anything to us, right? Whereas if your boss comes along and says, don't worry about this, guys. We've got to learn this stuff. You've got lots of latitude here. You can make the mistakes. You can go through the learning curve however you feel like you need to. That makes a difference, right? Psychological safety and purpose. Leadership's job in many ways, and certainly in this context, is to provide the things that we do with a purpose. Why are we changing, Chris? Why? My God, this is the third CRM we've had in the last 3 years. Why are we changing again? These questions have to be answered again, otherwise people just won't care. It's just not important enough to me, right? That's what leadership is about, creating that culture, creating that environment, and saying this is where we're going to go. Once we've changed, once we've done this thing that's so important because of X, because of this reason, we're going to go here. We're going to go to growth. We're going to employ more people. We're going to sell more stuff. We're going to make it more cheaply. We're going to be more efficient, whatever those objectives are going to be. And then really coming up behind, I talked about the technology there. That's where the training, this is where the practical change management stuff comes in. This is where the training, role-based training comes up. This is where Q&As come up. This is where clinics that you can hold comes up. This is where incentives. The best change management programs I've run have been competitions where people win prizes. You know, you have a weekly score of change, and the people who changed the most won the prizes, and everybody else got laughed at, hopefully in fun. Hopefully we were all bonding together. We're never meant to be a process of single. So that leadership and practical change management, I love that. That's a even tighter definition of what we're talking about. But all of those things, whether it's 2, 3, or 5 from the original gap framework that we had, all of them have to be given equal weight. All of them have to be done, and arguably they have to be done in order as well. It's a little bit like buyer behavior. You know, the customer has to identify a need, otherwise they are not going to buy. Then they do their information search. There's no point in telling people about a thing if they're not interested in buying it. Then they do their evaluation. They make the purchase decision, and they have a post-purchase analysis. Those are the steps that somebody goes through when they buy. This is the step you have to go through in order to successfully implement your customer platform. I love it.
Yeah. I think what we're highlighting is like just the different layers of this challenge and the opportunity. Because I think the 2, 3, and 5, like they represent, for lack of a better word, correct ways or ways you could be successful delivering this. Because when I'm looking at your 5 email series, like the way we present it, almost like maybe at when it's the 2, strategic and practical change management, that's got to be the message to leadership. Like you're in control of both of those things, and you're responsible for creating the environment. And obviously, practical change management cannot happen if you're not bought in, to why the change is happening. Can't communicate that to people. Then breaking it down to people, strategy, technology, then you start getting into the why so that you can share it with the rest of your team. And then as the team sees it, it's okay, what is this? We've got this tool. What does adoption even mean? Like why? I'm using it every day, but I'm only using the contact record. So I haven't really adopted HubSpot yet. And then getting into leadership prep, like, okay, and this is where we say leadership. We have to represent to create the safety. We have to handle the uncertainty that it's not leadership just going into the boardroom and figuring things out. We want to know what they're doing And the idea of we're not privy to that knowledge or it's above our pay grade, all that bullshit, like just get it out of here. All we have to do as a leadership team is just keep the teams updated as to what's going on. We're trying to figure this out right by your side. We've understood that the last 2 times we've tried to bring in CRM, it has gone to shit, right? We're trying to figure that out. We're doing the work, and then the assessment, the support, and the feedback. Like everybody is involved. And up to now, we've treated it like, okay, this team's going to do this.
Mm.
Nobody has time to understand the big picture. So we're going to try and handle all this stuff in silos. And surprise, systems aren't getting adopted.
Yeah. Yeah. And it probably ends up even worse, which leads you back to the scenario where in a year's time you'd be looking at yet another CRM because you're again blaming the tool, and it never was. And I think that's the picture that you paint there is the ideal. If a leadership team, I saw a brilliant definition, the difference between leadership and management today. And I can't wait to talk to Paul, my friend. We argue about this all the time. Leaders ask questions, managers answer them. I thought that was absolutely fantastic, right? So as a leadership team, this is what you should be doing of your teams, of the people that are going to be using, whether they're in silos or not. But don't forget, a silo is a natural state of affairs, right? A silo is created. Anytime you employ somebody in your business and say, you do that thing for us, you become really good at that thing. You create a silo. The problem isn't the fact that people are in silos. The problem is that those silos stay siloed. They don't connect properly. They're not aligned with everybody else in the organization. You will always have silos, but the efficient organizations talk to each other. They're able to do that. And in part because the leader is able to ask questions of the managers. And if the teams are integrated and aligned, the managers can answer those questions. There is another great analogy for HubSpot. The way you answer the questions, in other words, run your reports off, is directly proportional to how well you've asked the questions in the first place. What are we trying to achieve? Where are we going to go? How are we going to do it? Again, these same ideas can be expanded in almost in multiple directions, really, with multiple different meanings.
Yeah.
But I've just thought of another. You said it there, but just to put it another way, it's probably now deconstructed too much because it is basically strategy and operations. That's what adoption is: strategy and operations, thinking and doing, planning and execute, asking questions and answering them, however you want to define it. And I think whichever, what I'm trying to get across, I see what I'm trying to get across as you need to look at this other bit as well. Don't just look at this bit. Don't just treat it as the point solutions as we've talked about it. Think of it as a customer platform. So as a leader, get your teams together, show them the capability of the thing, show them what the vision, what the dream is for using this thing, and let them invent the solutions.
It's not, they can.
Exactly.
They're
far better qualified than you are to do it. And with the greatest respect to HubSpot agencies like us all over the place, far better qualified than they are to do it as well.
Yeah. So like most of the time, especially any partners watching this or consultants, and the difference between like consulting and coaching and things like that, like the best we can do is help them and ask those questions. Make sure they're asking those questions. If they tell you that this is the third one that they're on, no matter what the time scale is, no matter what, like why didn't the other ones work should be your first question. And then they answer that one of two ways usually. We don't know, which is clearly why they didn't work in the first place, or XYZ. Okay, great. Why is XYZ different now that this third one's going to work? What are you doing differently? Like it's just question after question. And again, this is why I'm not even comfortable doing it still. But the 5 whys, these things where you just dig and dig, like they're proven to work for a reason. Because, and if you don't get to these levels, which most of the time leaders are not prepared to do this on their own, which is why some of my favorite sessions are when you have leadership alongside the daily users. And there's a clear disconnect to understanding what the process is at the daily level. And the whole sometimes it's the smallest of things too. And when you can reveal that, oh, all of a sudden the CRM is going to work for us. Because I know that there's a company record too,
Yeah,
instead of
that's
just a
so
contact
true.
record,
It's
right?
so true. I had a lady, I was working with the team the other day, and she'd just be normally resistant, not anything special, and probably a perspective only we have as partners because we see it so often. Otherwise, very happy to engage, very, and I showed her how the automation worked, probably for the first time, and she went, "Now it all makes sense." What do you mean? And she said, "I've been really struggling to understand how this and this and this will happen. I didn't see the difference between doing it there and doing it in a spreadsheet or doing it out of my email or wherever. Now I've understood that HubSpot will do this magical thing. Suddenly the whole thing became clear. And she's moved from just being open to it to being an advocate for that process. At another conversation, every time I speak to somebody, I ask questions all the time. This is a real life conversation I had with a guy who uses HubSpot. I'm not going to name him. Why did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? This is the question I ask all the time. And the first thing he said was that people didn't see the value, right? They didn't see the value in doing the things that they were being asked to do. If that's not a leadership problem, I don't know what is. If leadership has not explained to you why you bloody doing the thing that you're doing, that's crazy. Excuse my language. And the other thing is, he said people didn't understand either. So not only did they not appreciate, they didn't understand what the value of what they were doing was, and they didn't know how to do it. So you've got a perfect storm here. Think of it from an adoption perspective, right? You're now going to use this tool to do your job. Okay, I don't know why. I can't see the point, and I don't know how. Adoption gap. Bang. Whole thing falls over. It's just as simple as that. When the lady whose eyes opened when I showed her how our workflow worked, accidentally, I didn't do it on purpose. It's not like I thought, I know what'll win her over. We were just talking, penny dropped. Once people understand this stuff, they're there. Once people understand it, they're on board. And I say, again, that is very much a leadership thing, I think.
Yeah.
That's still the
And
biggest issue towards adoption, the leadership buy-in.
yeah. Well, and those two questions, like they're the only ones that can answer that, the what and the why, and make the space for you to do the how, understand the how, like these training programs and all that stuff, like the space for that. There's so much of, oh, you'll figure it out. Oh, go take that course. If I'm not, if I feel like I'm 8 hours a day, like talking to customers, I'm not making the time for that because you
Yeah.
told me some other time that the priority is the customers.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. Think about this. If your leadership is not explaining to use your customer platform, which we've said before, right, on this show, and I'm sure you've said it in other Let's Build shows as well, we've said is the operating system of your business, right? It's as fundamental as that for me. Do you think leadership has previously explained the operating system of the business before the CRM came along? Because I'm going to guess it didn't.
No.
And what you've got is an organic mess, if I can use that word, of processes, systems and processes. And you've got an almost accidental outcome. You're doing a thing and you're doing it inefficiently, you're doing it expensively, and you're not making as much money as you otherwise could be. So
Oh, man.
when somebody comes along and goes, here's your CRM, the reason that it's not getting adopted properly is because the business doesn't know what it doesn't know. It's not consciously competent about itself anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Man, I want to build so many narratives. It's like you say it's been organic, like quite literally, because the humans have been the system.
Yeah.
Right? And all this when we talk about process and data like existing, whether you manage it or not, whether it's intentional or not, that's because, and I'm starting to connect the dots. Somebody said last week, like, why aren't people using AI agents more when it comes to customer support? It's almost like the closer that the rep or the team member is to the customer. Let's say sales and customer service is likely the two closest people.
Yep.
Businesses have relied on that one-to-one synchronous communication, human-to-human conversation and communication more than anything else. And they simply don't have content or data
Yep.
to support those interactions without the human beings. So as we are talking about this system, like if a business were to describe what the system did look like before the CRM, it's largely human based because
Yep.
they've got all the information here and they're doing it on the phone, they're doing it on their emails. That's where, like, when you brought up the safe spaces, if I see this new system, I don't understand it. I don't understand why we have to use it. And these just big uncertainty clouds, the things that I am certain about, the things that are going to make me safe. And I still do it sometimes, like when days get crazy, right? Let me go check the inbox. Is there an email I could respond to? Is there
Yes.
somebody I could call and just have a conversation that like forgets about this stuff, right? And that's where some of the magic that we find is like when we can redirect that into the CRM. Okay, if you do that email, if that safety can come from doing the email inside of the CRM instead of in your Outlook, now we
Yep.
start to close that gap. But that's where there's so much uncertainty around, okay, if it's here now, who's seeing it? And what are they going to do when they see it? Like the big
Exactly.
brother
Yeah.
mentality,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's where leadership is literally the
It's the
consultant
only one.
for this.
The only one. But the people who don't want to connect their inboxes that's such a great example. If you want to know whether they feel psychologically safe or not, ask that question. Hey, let's connect the. So when you connect the email to HubSpot, everybody can see all the emails. Yeah. Why is that not a good thing? Why is that not a good thing? There you go. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. And I tell you, there's another really interesting point that you made there. The reason humans are organically growing, the reason humans are able to do it is because we're amazing machines. We fill all the gaps. Right, a customer success person who's got a couple of years experience, a salesperson with a few years experience, the things they can do and process, the speed at which they can process, using the tacit knowledge of their business, all the stuff or experience has taught them over the 5-10 years that they've been there is unreplicable. You cannot repeat or replicate that on paper, right? Because you've allowed it to run out of control. It's like a forest fire. It just tears through everything. The aspect tears through everything. If you cannot write down the processes of your business, you cannot build your CRM. And that's why so many of these initial projects are so difficult, because you're trying to empty people's heads of all of this stuff that they've picked up. And you're trying to put it into a HubSpot or into any other CRM, or just write it down on a piece of paper. A business should be a very simple machine for turning effort into cash. The simpler the process, the more efficient the process, the better. We shouldn't have processes where you've got to speak to Jack, who's got 10 years experience in answering questions like this, and we'll pull something out of his behind because he's done it so many other times. And then also speak to Mary, who's going to be able to work the finance side of it, because your financial processes are, you can't run a business like that. People run a business like that all the time. And that's why the CRM stuff doesn't work, because you aren't able to pull that out of those people and put it down in paper.
Yeah, and no doubt one of the worst experiences out there is asking a question and getting the expert answer. And then the next time you have a question, not getting the expert. Like, you just know that you're getting less than. And it might be a serviceable answer, but this experience of, oh, again, we're back to uncertainty.
Yeah.
Oh, what would Jack have said?
Yeah.
Like, did I really get the whole picture? Am I really going to do this the best way?
And as soon as that doubt's in there, you're dead. The answer's dead. I don't believe the answer. It's making me feel unsafe. Therefore, I'm gonna move on to the next thing. 100%.
Yeah. And as this organic adoption, when it does happen, like when you force CRMs into a business and you literally remove the other tools, because that's where the most common ways I've seen is usually with the stick if you don't have a closed deal, you're not getting commission.
Yeah.
Right. Or you literally
Fear of
taken
loss.
out the email system, like you
Yeah.
can't use it anymore.
Yeah.
Now you've got all these people who are not experts telling each other how to use their system. And that's where just got to come together
Yeah.
on some ways. And it's really not like one of the things I just noticed as I was continuing to ideate on how to talk about this stuff. It's like the complexity is front end loaded
Yes.
so that everything gets easier after,
Yeah.
right? So the important part is this is the difference between point solution and customer platform. There's complexity whether you want it there or not at the front. And if you take the time to do it, like phrases like 1 minute of planning saves 10 minutes of execution, all that stuff is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. It's the learning curve. The adoption gap is the learning curve. Your performance dives because of all that upfront processing that you're having to do before it can climb and surpass where you were previously because of the new tool that you've brought in. Anyway, I think it's about another 5 shows there.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to hit all 5 too eventually. So we hope this is helpful. Even as you describe some things there, just the challenge, but also fun part of HubSpot is being there for those moments where it just clicks.
Yeah.
Yes,
Amazing,
yes,
isn't it?
it's frustrating that we can't put our finger on exactly how to do that the same way every time. but
Yeah,
but we know that we have to get there. When we do, it's a beautiful thing, and all of a
it is.
sudden the platform becomes available and is very powerful.
The
So
penny drops. Yeah, I love it.
we're gonna keep after it. If any of these analogies or frameworks or whatever we're talking about on the show resonate or don't, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know what you think. In the meantime, think about leadership and how they've been representing changes like this to you. Maybe suggest places or opportunities to improve. Find those opportunities. Let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.